Let's examine this monumental 11-volume set of the messages and papers of the presidents, all bound in this very attractive early 20th century leather binding with the compartments all stamped in gilt with the shield. The set includes this 11th volume, which is the Encyclopedia and Biographical Index to the set. They're all attractive looking books like this. The set is all edges are gilt. There are these map and pictorial end papers of Washington, D.C. with the key buildings like so. There's this at the back, a map of the world showing the United States. And we get into it like this and see there is a frontis here. And let's see. That's interesting. It says to examine the Encyclopedic Index, the volume 11, because that really is the key to the set. It begins with reproductions of the draft of the Declaration of Independence, Articles of Confederation here, the Constitution is printed, and then we get into, of course, George Washington and his letters here at the beginning. They move on, of course, to Thomas Jefferson and James Monroe, like so, James Madison. And I'm going to show you now briefly each binding. There is a little bit of light minor scuffing in places. There are a couple spine ends that are ever so slightly chipped. The set is illustrated. Here's like an image of the first Bank of the United States. This little paper protruding there is just a printer's error on the sheet of paper. And so, like this, we get this kind of a color frontis here, 1909, showing the Treasury Department with a trolley. That's kind of interesting, very interesting. And there are other illustrations all throughout the set, like this one, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, like so. Andrew Jackson, Martin Van Buren. And the next volume, it's a very heavy set. It'll probably require 2 boxes to ship it. It'll probably weigh at least 50 pounds. There's a little tiny nick at the base of the spine there. We see here the post office there, tissue guard, volume 3. And now here we get James Polk, Declaration of War against Mexico, Siege of Veracruz. So there's interesting other sorts of historical documents within here. And volume 4, like this, just this monumental thing. James Buchanan, Franklin Pierce. Okay, and for instance, this is just the list of all the illustrations in volume 4. Battle of Gettysburg, Lincoln's Proclamation, and so on. They're easy to go by because the paper is relatively thin, but here we see they appear to be reproductions of wood engravings of the era, largely probably taken from various sources, such as, here's an actual reproduction of a letter, Harper's Weekly it could be, there's portraits, drawings, so on, like this. Okay, volume 5 here. Yes, really a handsome set, nicer than typical. The set was issued in a wide, well, let's say a number of bindings. Tiny little chip here, tiny little split here. And this is one of the nicer of the bindings that I've seen it in. It does have a tendency, the binding is probably not as strong as it really ought to have been for the contents that are this monumental and heavy internally. And so often, well, this tissue guard is lightly adhered, so I'm not going to try to force that, but that would be easy to unstick with a butter knife the backside of a clean butter knife. Sometimes tissue guards adhere to the edge due to the gilt. Actually, that was what was going on with that one. Was when the edges of the text block were gilt, just a tiny bit of it caused that tissue guard to adhere to the edge of the print sheet. And there's another one there. So, okay. This volume here, little tiny split up there, tiny little short split here, but of course still sound, clean, and tight, like this. Monumental, like endless, hundreds of hours of reading. Great resource. Looks great on the shelf. Very interesting, actually, to sit and read letters that presidents have written. Can't wait to read some of the ones the current occupant has written. Let's see here, Congressional Library. Teddy Roosevelt now we're up to. It was a relatively smart guy. And this one here has a little tiny chip at the base and a tiny little bit of chipping at the head there. I just want to be clear about that in advance. Here are the illustrations, for instance, in volume 10. And every single one of these appears to have this little inserted supplemental sheet to be sure to examine the 11th volume, the index. So we're going to skip that. No, just kidding. Let's take a look. We'll see what's so significant here. Volume 11, like so. And there we got the development of the flag. And here we are. This is the Encyclopedic Index to the Messages and Papers. It contains 25,000 page references, history of each state, all this right here. Yeah, I can see why. Facsimile reproductions of state papers. Right, this is sort of the key that unlocks the set. And this volume actually is often not found with the set. I don't know why that would be. It may be a supplement. It's alphabetical like so, but my goodness, this is encyclopedic in nature. Clean, tight, and sound, as they all are. Very impressive shelf appearance. Nice looking set, and it is available now online from me, Brian DiMambro.